Hello friends, it is Yagul. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. I hope that you're having a wonderful day and that you had a safe and happy new year. I'm super excited for today's video because today we are going to get a little bit crafty. One thing I really want to focus on this year is dedicating more time to being creative and making videos. So I wanted to start a new series on my channel where we try out some different DIYs and crafts that I found on the internet. And more specifically, crafts that I found on TikTok. TikTok is a magical and sometimes truly terrifying place full of incredibly talented people and super fun crafts that I thought that we would try out together. So for today's craft, I wanted to show you how I made this Coraline doll. Now, I'm actually not sure who did this first, but I know the first person I saw do it was Kirsten K on TikTok and on Instagram, and it just looked so much fun. So I instantly ran out and grabbed the things that I needed to make it, and I made this one as just kind of a prototype to make sure that I could do it before I started this video. And I think for a first attempt, she came out so cute. I am so happy with her, but I do think that there are some things that I could improve upon with a second try. So for instance, her head, the reason I'm holding her like this is her head is a little bit heavy. It's just solid air dry clay, and the skeleton of the doll is just wire. So the wire isn't quite strong enough to support just a giant lump of air dry clay. So today we are going to be trying to make one with an aluminum foil core. Hopefully that'll make it a little bit lighter and a little bit easier to stabilize. Another kind of mistake I made with this one is I didn't pay too much attention when I was sewing. So one of her legs is longer and thicker than the other one, but that is okay. We still love her. But I will be paying more attention to that this time around. For her hair, I used these super cute embroidery braids. They actually did come like this just in the packaging, and I thought that they would make super cute little pigtail braids. But because the thread is so thin, it was really tedious and time-consuming to attach it to the clay. So for today, I have some nice thick yarn that I think will be much better. But I still really like the way this one came out. I think it's super cute. And when I attached the hair, I used hot glue, which probably was not a good idea, but I was just really impatient and so ready for it to be done at that point. But it did leave this kind of gluey buildup around the part of her hair. I covered it in black paint so that it's not as noticeable. But today we're going to try using Mod Podge. I think that that'll work a lot better. It won't create any sort of buildup, and it should dry clear. But yeah, like I said, for a first attempt, absolutely not mad about her at all. I think that she's so super...
He needs some milk!
I think that she's so super cute, but I am excited to try a second time and sort of apply all the things I learned from making this one. I have loved Coraline ever since I was a little girl. I remember it was actually the first book that I ever did a book report on. I was in 4th grade, so we had this list of books that you could choose from, and me and several other kids in my class were all doing book reports on Coraline, and you had to present your book report in front of the class dressed as one of the characters. And I remember all the other kids that chose Coraline dressed up as Coraline, which was really cool, but me being the little creepy child that I was, I decided that I wanted to come dressed as the other mother instead. So my mom made me this really cool mask that had button eyes and cracks in the face, and it was just really freaky and cool. And so when I saw this craft, I just got super nostalgic, and I knew that I absolutely had to try it out. Now that I have talked forever at the beginning of this video, that seems to be a recurring theme in my videos now. I think that we are finally ready to get into the materials that you are going to need to make your very own Coraline doll. This craft is a little bit intense. It has a lot of materials that you're going to need to complete it. There definitely were some things that I had to purchase, but I was really lucky to find a lot of this stuff just in ye old craft closet, so please do not be afraid to take a look around your house to find some materials that you can use or draw inspiration from to make your doll more special to you. let's get into what you are going to need to make your Coraline doll. So the first thing you're going to need is some clay. I chose air dry clay, but you can also use polymer clay if you like. You're going to want some nice thick wire, and if you want to create piercings for your doll, you're going to want thin wire too. You're going to need a skin color fabric, and of course a needle and thread, and then just any other fabrics or ribbons or little decorations that you want for your doll. You're also going to need some paint for the details on your face and some yarn for your hair. And don't forget about your button eyes, and you're going to need some Mod Podge to attach the yarn to your clay. I would recommend having pliers and scissors for this process, and of course you're going to need some aluminum foil and some fluff to stuff your doll with. Here I'm just establishing my workspace, and I'm creating the base of my doll's head. And then I'm going to take my thick wire and start creating the skeleton of my doll. And there's really no method to how I did this. I just didn't want to have to cut wire and reattach it because I didn't think it would be as sturdy. So I'm just creating a nice long trunk and then wrapping the wire around itself to create the arms and the legs. You want to make sure that the neck is longer than you actually want it to be because you're going to have to attach the wire to the aluminum foil ball by kind of puncturing it, so you are going to lose a little bit of length of the wire there. Once my wire was attached to my aluminum foil ball, I went ahead and added another layer of aluminum foil just to make sure that everything was connected really well. Once you've created the skeleton of your doll, you are ready to start adding clay. You want to make sure that you don't add it on too thin because then once you start trying to establish details, you're probably going to run into the aluminum foil underneath, and you don't want it to be too thick because then your head's going to be too heavy. Next, you're going to establish where you want your eyes to go, and I would recommend having a little bit of water on hand for this because then you're just going to start smoothing everything out around it. But make sure you don't use too much water because it can cause your clay to crack when it starts to dry. Here I'm just adding the nose, and I'm doing the same thing, just adding some water and kind of smoothing everything out around it until I have a shape I'm happy with, and I'm going to do the exact same thing for the ears. I'm giving my doll a little septum ring, so I just created a little horseshoe out of my thin wire, and I'm just going to press it into the nose like so. And then I also wanted to give my doll earrings, so I'm just creating a little circle shape around my finger, and think of these earrings more as placeholders just so that a hole dries into the ear, and we can worry about actually attaching the earrings later. Now I'm using a toothpick to establish where my doll's mouth is going to be, and I made it super long and creepy so it looked more doll-like. And then you're going to attach some lips just with little pieces of clay and maybe some water, and then you can go back over any spots that you messed up with the toothpick again. Now that you have your doll's face mapped out, it is time to start working on the body. So you're going to take your flesh-colored fabric, some needle and thread, and I would recommend also having a pencil. I took my fabric and doubled it over, that way when I start cutting I can cut out both sides at the same time, and I'm just kind of mapping out where I want the body to go around my skeleton with a pencil super wide so I have plenty of room for my stuffing and my sewing. Then once you have a shape that you're happy with, just cut it out. So I had my fabric folded over at the top, so I'm just going to disconnect the two pieces and then you are ready to sew. Now, in my opinion, the sewing is the most tedious part, and I am certainly not a seamstress, so I'm going to be speeding all of this way up. But basically, you're going to sew it the same way you would sew a little pillow, by lining up the two sides and sewing almost all the way around it, but making sure you leave a hole so that you can turn it inside out when you're done. That's going to make sure that your seams are nice and clean and that there isn't any extra fabric just sort of hanging out. So I started sewing at one shoulder, and then I'm going to leave my open space by the other shoulder, and you're just going to turn it inside out, and then you're going to stuff it before you slip it onto your skeleton. Once your wire skeleton is nice and tucked in, you're going to go ahead and sew up the hole that you left, and now you are ready to let your clay dry.
One eternity later.
So it has been an amount of time since I started this video. We don't have to talk about how long it's been, but the good news is that during that amount of time that we're not going to talk about, our clay has dried and we are now ready to decorate. So the hardest part is pretty much over. There is one little piece of bad news, and that is that I might have used too much water while making the head, so we do have a little bit of cracking. Luckily, all of the cracking on mine has happened on the back, which we're going to paint anyway to go underneath the hair, so that is okay. No harm done. We can proceed. So with that being said, I am going to go ahead and start painting this. I'm going to leave most of the face blank because there's really not much of a difference there, so I don't think that there's a point to, yeah. So I am going to now paint the back of the head where the hair is going to go, and that way if there's any like spaces between the yarn, you still won't be able to see the cracks or the clay underneath. So I'm going to paint all of that black, and then I'm going to do some eyebrows, some lipstick, and a little bit of blush just to make her look a little bit more like me. So now I'm just going to paint the entire back of the head behind the ears, just in a big circle, and then we can start working on the facial features. I'm going to map out my eyebrows with a toothpick before I actually start painting, just to make sure I don't make any mistakes, which I still did. Now you can add as many or as few facial features as you like. I'm just going to be adding some eyebrows, blush, and some freckles, and a little bit of black lipstick. After letting the face dry, it is time to start working on her outfit. So I have this really cool, roughly layered ribbon that I'm going to use to make a skirt. And I'm also going to make a corset style top, and I'm going to try to make some fishnet thigh highs. So creating the clothing might seem super difficult, but it's actually really simple. All I'm going to do is measure out how much of the fabric I'm actually going to need, and then I'm going to fold the fabric with the outside facing in, so that when we're done sewing it, we can flip it inside out just like we did when we were sewing our body, and the seams are going to be nice and clean. And now we have a cute little skirt. The next thing I'm going to work on is her top. I want it to be a lace-up corset style top. So I'm going to measure out my ribbon. I'm actually turning the ribbon inside out because I don't want it to be sparkly. And I'm going to make sure that there's a nice open space in the front so that when I sew it, I can sew it in a nice lace-up pattern. And I'm not really sure how to describe the way I'm doing this, but you can just see for yourself. So now that I have one side of my laces sewn, I'm going to cut the string nice and long so that there is enough to tie it at the top. And now I'm just going to repeat the exact same thing on the other side. Now that the bodice part of our shirt is done, I'm going to make some little short sleeves. So I'm going to start by cutting off any part of the ribbon I don't feel like I need, and we're going to sew it the same way we sewed the skirt, by sewing what we want the outside of our sleeves to be together so that when we turn it inside out, the seams are all neat and tidy. Here I'm just taking a couple of little quick stitches to attach the sleeves to the bodice itself. And then we just rinse and repeat. Instead of throwing them away, I decided to take the little strips of ribbon that we cut off to make the sleeves to make some cute little garter straps for her fishnets. So here I'm just trimming them down a little bit more, and then I'm just going to stitch them at the top and at the bottom so that they stay nice and still. So now I'm just going to take this super cute fishnet fabric that I just found lying around my house, and I'm going to make some little stockings for her. I actually thought that sewing this was going to be really difficult, but I just paid super close attention to make sure that I was only sewing unbroken little diamonds, and it was actually really easy. The only thing I really had to do differently was make sure that I tied a knot around the fabric at the beginning so that the knot wouldn't go through the fishnet. So So once I was done, I tied another little knot at the bottom and turned it inside out, and that's when I realized I actually sewed her stockings a little bit too short, but that is okay because it gave me the opportunity to make super cute lace tops for her stockings, and that actually ended up being my favorite part of her little outfit. So to do this, I just took one of the layers out from the layered ribbon that I used to make her skirt, and I sewed it in half just to make this little ruffly piece that I could sew on top of the little fishnets. And when I attached the top of her stockings, I just made sure to take a couple of stitches into the little fishnets and into the leg of the doll just to make sure everything stayed put. And there are her little fishnets. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy with the way this part turned out. As Bob Ross says, we don't make mistakes, we just make happy accidents. And this was a very happy accident. I think that they came out so cute. I ended up being so glad that I sewed the fishnets too short and I was able to make the cute little lace tops for them. Now the camera actually died during this part, so I wasn't able to get it on film, but I wanted my doll to be a COVID-safe queen, so I made a little mask for her out of the skull fabric that I had earlier, and I just did that the same way that I made the skirt. And just as a little finishing touch, I wanted to show you guys how I made the O-ring choker that my first doll had. It's super simple. All you're gonna do is take some ribbon, fold it in half and sew it, and you're gonna take your thick wire that you use to make the skeleton of your doll and turn it into a little O-ring, and you're just gonna sew it together. And now it is finally time to attach the hair to our doll. So all you're gonna do is cut a bunch of pieces of yarn the same length. We can focus on giving your doll a haircut later. And you're just gonna start at the front, working your way around to the back, putting a layer of Mod Podge, placing your yarn, and then smoothing the edges down with more Mod Podge. And once all the hair has been placed, it is finally time to give your doll a haircut. I would recommend waiting until the Mod Podge dries to do this, but I was super impatient, so I didn't do that, and I just propped her up on the big ball of yarn. And now for the moment we've all been waiting for. It is finally time to attach our button eyes to our doll. For my first doll, I did this using hot glue, and that worked out pretty well, but this time I decided to use Gorilla Glue just to make sure that they were gonna stay. And now finally you can set your doll aside to dry overnight, and we are done! And that is it. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you tried making a Coraline doll of yourself or of a friend. I think that they are so fun, and they are a little bit tedious, but I think that it is totally worth it. I really wanted this video to be out by Christmas because I thought that these would be a super cute and only slightly creepy Christmas present or holiday present, but I don't actually think that there is ever a wrong time to give someone a creepy doll replica of themselves. So I really hope that you try it with some friends or some family, preferably family, since seeing friends isn't really an option right now, but maybe making one of your friend and mailing it to them. I think that that would be super adorable. Final thoughts. Let me put her head up. Oh god. Final thoughts, I really like the way both of these turned out. They each have their own little imperfections, but things that are perfect are boring, so I think that that is totally okay. This one is a lot lighter and it's a lot easier to keep the head up because we did do the aluminum foil core on this one, but all in all, I think that they're both super adorable. The thicker yarn was a lot easier to place. That actually ended up being one of the quickest parts of this whole process. I really thought that it was going to take a lot longer and be more stressful, but the Mod Podge, ooh, and there goes her head. The Mod Podge really worked out a lot better. It doesn't have the same kind of like gluey bulkiness that the hot glue had, and of course it dried clear, so you can't really even see it. Yeah, I think that it just turned out super cute. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Leave a like down below and subscribe. Not all of my crafting videos are going to be this involved and tedious. In fact, the ones that I'm working on right now are super duper simple. You could probably do them in like 10 minutes. But I really wanted to do this because I thought that it was just absolutely adorable. And even though it does take a while, like, what else are you doing right now? Probably nothing. So I think that this is a really cool quarantine craft. But yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Remember to stay safe and wear a mask, and have a great day.